You might ask yourself, do I really have to watch this lesson? Well, understanding grammar is key to understanding a language. So, would you like to learn the difference between must and have to? If so, you must watch this lesson. Welcome to English on the Mark. My name is Marek Pena, and in this lesson, you will learn how and when to use must and have to. Quite often, you may hear that must and have to are modal verbs. And this is not exactly true. Must is a true modal verb. Have to is a modal-like expression or semi-modal. The reason why have to is a modal-like expression is because its function and meaning is similar to must, which is a true modal verb. However, have to does not follow the grammar rules of a true modal verb. Both must and have to are similar in meaning. They express the idea that something is necessary. They talk about obligations or requirements. For example, if you want to study in the United States, you must take the TOEFL test. Or, if you want to study in the United States, you have to take the TOEFL test. So, if you are a non-native English speaker, it is necessary to take a language proficiency test. The test is required. You don't have any other choice but to take the test. Now, let's look at how we form sentences using must and have to. Both must and have to are followed by the base form of a verb, or the bare infinitive, and that's the verb without to. For instance, I must go. Go is the base form. I have to leave now. Leave is the base form. Must is a modal verb. There is no S in the third person singular. We say he, she, it must. Don't add the S. Don't say she musts, because that's incorrect. Negatives and questions are formed without the helping verb do. So we say, I must not, he must not, must I, must he. Please keep in mind that in American English, we almost never use must in questions. So saying, must I go now, is not very common. Have to, on the other hand, is different in the third person singular. We say, I have to, we have to, but he, she, it has to. Negatives and questions require the helping verb do. So we say, I do not have to, he does not have to, and do I have to, does he have to? Okay. As previously stated, both must and have to are used to talk about obligations, things that are necessary for us to do. Let's look at two examples here. I must stop smoking versus I have to stop smoking. If you asked a native speaker of American English, and not a teacher, but an ordinary person, what the difference is between these two sentences, that person would probably say that these sentences are the same. Some might say that must is stronger and more formal, and have to sounds more natural. So if you ever find yourself debating whether to use must or have to, just use have to, because have to is much more common than must. So let's dive right in and look at some differences between must and have to. There is one very important difference, so make sure you watch till the end. But let's start with number one. We use must if an obligation comes from the speaker, meaning the speaker decided himself that it is important, that it is necessary to do something. So I must stop smoking means that I want to do this. It is my decision to do this. Cigarettes are very expensive in New York, so in order to save money, I must stop smoking. We use have to when we talk about an obligation that comes from someone else. This could be an order from someone, or a regulation, or a requirement. So perhaps I went to see a doctor, and the doctor ordered me to stop smoking, because if I didn't, I would have a lot of health problems. That's why we say I have to stop smoking. Because my doctor told me to do this. These were the instructions given by my doctor. However, keep in mind what I said before. Most native speakers of American English would say that these two sentences are the same. Number two, we use must in formal written rules, in official forms, signs, and informal notices. For example, if you go to a restroom in a restaurant or even at a university, you will see the following sign. Employees must wash hands before returning to work. Or if you go to a hospital, you might see the following sign. All visitors must sign in at the front desk. You could also go to a website of any airline and you might see the following notice. You must show that the name on your boarding pass matches the name on your ID. So in formal notices, in official forms, signs, and in rules implemented by an organization, the verb must will be used and not have to. Number three, if you want to talk about past obligations or necessities, you need to use the verb have to. For example, before heading to the airport, we still had to pack our suitcases. Or, I had to buy a new iPad last week. Or, Michael had to renew his passport last month. Remember, we do not use must to talk about obligation or necessity in the past. If you want to talk about past obligations, use had to. And if you want to see more examples from newspapers or magazines, head to the English on the Mark on Instagram. Number four, finally, we will cover the most important difference between must and have to. It is very important to remember that must not and don't have to, doesn't have to, have completely different meanings. In negative statements, must not means that something is prohibited, that something is not allowed. You're basically saying that something is against the rules. For instance, you must not be late for your TOEFL test. You are not allowed to be late. It is against the rules. If you are late, you will not be able to take the official TOEFL test. Let's look at another example. You must not drive a car without a driver's license. You are not allowed to drive a car without a license. It is against the law. Don't have to, doesn't have to, on the other hand, means that it is not necessary to do something, but you have a choice. For instance, you don't have to bring a gift. This sentence tells you that it is not necessary to bring a gift. It is up to you. You have a choice here. You can either bring a gift or not. Let's look at another example. You don't have to go to college to be successful. If you want to be successful, it is not necessary to go to college. Again, you have a choice here. You either go to college or not. But a college degree doesn't guarantee success. Before we finish, let's look at two more sentences. You must not board the plane right now. Versus, you don't have to board the plane right now. The first sentence states that you are not allowed to board the plane. It is against the rules. The second sentence gives you a choice. You are able to board the plane, but it is not necessary. You don't need to do it right away. As a bonus, let's look at pronunciation. When you speak to someone, you might notice that have to is pronounced as have to, and has to is pronounced as has to. For example, I have to go. She has to leave. So the words are linked together. Also, the contraction must not is pronounced as mustn't. So the first T is silent. Also, don't say mustn't. I've heard quite a lot of students pronouncing it like that, but that's incorrect. And this brings us to the end of this lesson. But before we go, what are some things that you must have in order to survive on a deserted island? Please let me know in the comments below. That's all there is for today. Thank you, and as always, I hope you have learned something today.